Okay, so after the last video on Jeebus, a lot of people still wanted me to cover Project Nexus. So I put out a poll for people to choose if I should cover it or not. And if I should, then please tell me about the timeline of the game. And a lot of people voted yes, including telling me about a commonly accepted timeline that make the most sense and ignore the outfit they were in the games due to them possibly only being there to make the character more recognizable due to Sanford and Deimos essentially just being a grunt in the episode they appear in. So shout out to these people, big thanks to them. Anyways, let's continue.
I'm not done kicking your ass yet.
Tricky is the secondary antagonist of Madness Combat and the arch enemy of Hank J. Wimbledon. He was first an assassin working under the sheriff in Madness Combat Redeemer before being the main antagonist of the Tricky saga that started from apotheosis to consternation. But if we want to understand about his origin even better, then we need to go back to the beginning. 15 years ago, Tricky, or Dr. Hofnar, is a scientist working alongside his friend Dr. Christoph, aka Jeebus. He worked at a program called Project Nexus, which he has a higher level access than most of the scientists, including Christoph, as seen by his green clip tag, showing how intelligent Hofnar is, a trait he would later carry on to his clown self, and how valuable he might be to the program and to the director, Phobos. After Christoph started a zombie outbreak to try and take down the Project Nexus, seeing it being ineffective, Christoph then later come to ask Hofnar for help as an old friend, implying that both might have been friends before the two falling out, due to a line said by Christoph saying that I can trust Hofnar, just hope it's mutual. Another possibility might be Christoph worrying how loyal Hofnar might be to the program, or Christoph worrying about him starting the breakout might break some trust between him and Hofnar. Either way, Christoph asked Hofnar for help and explained his intention behind his decision to start an outbreak, being that he doesn't agree with Phobos' intentions to use the program and Christoph's scientific efforts for his own self-gain. After seeing 31137 agents trying to attack them, Hofnar agreed with Christoph's plan and conclude that they have no other choice. Hofnar then helped Christoph navigate around the building and later granting Christoph access to the main tower of the program. So, it seems that Hofnar still has some worries on his mind with going along with Christoph's plans due to him saying that Phobos will finish us for this, contrasted by Christoph saying Phobos better watch his back. Before granting Christoph access to the main tower, Hofnar said, "Good luck, old friend," before he walked in. This might be him worrying for Christoph's safety or about Christoph's plan failing and backfires to the rest of the scientists, including Hofnar at the project. Before the events of this installment, possibly somewhere around 15 to 30 years after the events of Project Nexus, Hofnar has now transitioned from a scientist to a clown. The reason for this stated by Crinkles or because of Hofnar being inspired by Slaughter Time, due to his affection to entertainers/entertainments, so much that he turned into Tricky, which some people suspect that it might also partly come from Hofnar injecting himself with the dissonance energy that he was researching for the Project Nexus. According to dialogue exchange between Tricky and Jeebus in Madness Project Nexus 2 before the former boss battle, it seemed that before the event of Project Nexus transpired, Hofnar developed a diversion engine that seemed to be siphoning the dissonance energy for the project, and he might have tested some of the energy on himself. that leads to his gradual loss of sanity, turning him into a clown. Later, he got a contact from the sheriff, a person he has met before, due to Kristoff's series of emails to the sheriff about Hofnar, asking for Hofnar to protect him, with Hofnar having switched job from a scientist to an assassin clown, possibly for the killing and entertainment of the assassin job compared to a scientist. Hofnar accepted the sheriff's request. Hofnar later appeared in the installment trying to kill Hank with an M16 before being killed by Hank after getting his gun stolen. Curiously, Hofnar wasn't revived as a zombie when Kristoff, now known as Jeebus, entered. This might be due to Jeb's experience with the zombies through his former co-worker, Dr. Crackpot. On the letter's plan said that are trying to make a sleepwalker patient similar to Jeb's project, which end up resulting into the uncontrollable mindless zombies instead, and don't want to subject his old friend to that fate. Hofnar appeared once more after the improbability drive was activated by the sheriff, trying to kill Hank with his M60 before shoving Hank off the building and following Hank. Later, Hofnar appeared behind Hank to try and stab him before getting stabbed himself in the chest by a stop sign, killing him for the second time. After Hank left, Hofnar was struck by a blue lightning, possibly by the higher power, reviving him into a zombie. The reason for Hofnar revival might be from the higher power finding the earthly conflict amusing and entertaining. After Hofnar was revived, he took the stop sign off his chest and started to follow Hank once more. Later, Hofnar found Hank before getting shot 5 times but seemed to be able to shrug it off, showing that the zombie from the higher powers might have a higher pain tolerance than the normal zombie. After that, Hofnar tried to hit Hank with a stop sign before Hank took it away and finished him off with a desert eagle, killing him for the 3rd time. Hofnar, now being tricky full-time, appeared in the intro, with text corroborating his appearance saying no reasons, describing Tricky's affection for entertainment and his lack of reason supporting his action after becoming a clown. While the text pop up, we can see Tricky putting on his iconic metal slab. The reason for this might be to fool people into thinking that he isn't a zombie, due to his ability to turn his hands normal, and him being a DJ this time instead of an assassin. Tricky switching to being DJ might be him trying to find new ways to entertain himself, or him being inspired by Slaughter Time once more, with music blasting while carnage happened in Slaughter Time. Hank later met Tricky in the club being the DJ and shot him in the face, but seeing that the clown still stand up without any pain, Hank made his way through the horde of ravers before threatening Tricky with his katana. But before Hank can kill Tricky, Jeb's break in, diverging Hank's attention from the clown. Curiously, Tricky sweat at the sight of Jeb. The reason for this might be due to him worrying about Jeb's thought on his current state, because though seems insane, Tricky still has some of Hofnar's sanity left inside before he got the improbability drive inserted inside his head. Thus, still worried about his old friend feeling about his current state in life before Hank and Jeb battles once more. Later, Hank got shot, resulting in Tricky being shocked, who up until now might have thought that Hank is invincible due to his constant revival, his skills to dodge attacks, and not really seeing how he dies in the past episode due to being killed by Hank first. After Hank blew himself up to kill Jeb, seeing that there's no one left for the clown to dance or to entertain, Tricky shrugged it off and started to dance anyway, before the screen flashing black with the text saying, "And he danced." With Jeb leading Hank to where Hofnar is hiding, which is the sleeper labs. Jeb finally seen what his old friend has become. an insane zombified clown called Tricky. Tricky seems to be back working with the Nexus core, or at the very least using the place as his hideout, with it being his personal playground, possibly inspired by Slaughter Time. This is where he would wait for guests to arrive so he could play with them by making them fight through waves of asylum patients and multiple traps for his own amusement, showing how far gone Hofnar has become ever since he became the clown. From a brilliant scientist to an insane clown, but his intelligence hasn't deteriorated, unlike his sanity. According to Jeb, only the brilliance of Hofnar can help to shut down the divergence engine, which Hofnar helped develop. And when Jeb and Hank met Tricky, though seemingly insane, Jeb still refers to him as Hofnar, implying that Jeb still knows that some part of Hofnar is still inside Tricky, even with his insanity, and him being inserted with improbability drive, signifying by his glitchy voice, movement, and supernatural powers. When the two encounter Tricky in the sleeper labs, Hank begins the conversation, demanding Tricky to help them shutting down Project Nexus, but Tricky denied his demand, saying there's still too much for him to do, implying that he might have returned here to help with the project. Jeb then talked to Tricky in a less demanding tone than Hank, saying that it's time for them to end the project for good, like how they should have done 30 years ago, possibly implying that they both haven't seen each other in around 30 years, backing up by Tricky saying that shouldn't Jeb be saving Nevada instead of tying past loose ends. After that, Jeb explained that if Nexus Core continue developing under Phobos objectives, it would be bad for both of them, trying to get Tricky to cooperate in shutting down the engine he used to help develop. But right now, only one thing is on Tricky's mind, which is slowly killing both Jeb and Hank for his own entertainment, while Jeb trying to negotiate with Tricky by having the clown establish his own terms for him to tell Jeb and Hank on how to shut down the divergence engine. Tricky loved this idea and said that his terms would be them surviving his playhouse for big prizes, satisfying Tricky needs for entertainment and chaos. Ignoring Jeb's refusal, the party has begun with Tricky as the announcer, like how Goyal is in Slaughter Time. With Hank and Jeb surviving all the waves Tricky has put out, the clown want to finish the two off with an escapable laser wall. While the walls started closing in, Tricky reminisced about the time him and Jeb team up to kill Hank, harkening back to MC2 and MC3, where they both work under the sheriff to prevent Hank from killing him, before Hank retorts back to Tricky, asking if the clown remembered the time he killed it, referring to how in MC2 and 3, Hank always managed to kill Tricky before the clown can kill him. Tricky then taunts Hank on the fact that though Hank has killed it multiple times, the clown is still able to come back and is standing above him right now. But before Jeb and Hank can be killed, Nexus Core agents appear, seemingly as a response to Tricky's shenanigans in the sleeper lab with his playhouse, and according to the dialogue, it showed that the Nexus Core knows about Tricky hiding somewhere in their building and tried to track him down before. Seeing Jeb on the platform, the agents mistook it as Tricky being in the cahoots with Jeb, causing them to ask for backup for their location and try to kill Jeb, angering Tricky due to him wanting to be the one to kill the two instead of some agents from the core. So Tricky decided to help Jeb and Hank in fighting off these agents, making remarks about the old days they used to do this together back in Project Nexus 1. After defeating the agents due to their meddlings resulting in Tricky's entertainment being ruined, Tricky is now happy to help Jeb and Hank in their mission, telling them about the way to the main tower, before saying that he will catch them next time. Tricky later appears to surprise Deimos and Sanford before trying to kill them, mistaking them for being the members of the Nexus Core. After introducing himself to the duo, Tricky told them about the consequences of ending the Project Nexus, saying that if the tower can't cycle itself out of the other place and back into Nevada, reality is going to have a major overhaul. Deimos then asked Tricky on how to prevent it, but Tricky just said, "You'll figure it out," before disappearing with a confetti. This scene proved Jeb's possible point and thoughts on Tricky still having some part of Hofnar left inside, with this scene showing that Hofnar's intelligence is still intact inside Tricky's brain, with him knowing about the project's purpose and the other place. Later, he was mentioned by Sanford that after their interaction, Tricky is just running around indiscriminately killing people in the city, whilst other factions fight each other, implying that after Tricky breaks off from the Nexus core, the clown is possibly just running around killing people for his own satisfaction, and being overall natural in the whole conflict. Due to if he allies with any of the faction, that means less kills for him in the long run. Tricky later appeared in the end credits, dancing on the highway barrier, possibly planning his next attack on the protagonist of the series. Tricky later got hired by the auditor of the AAHW to take care of Hank, due to the threat he poses to reality, which Tricky gladly accepts due to him wanting to finish the job from the playhouse and wanting to have more fun with his old friend. While Jeb and Hank were fighting, Tricky appears only as a stop sign in the pit that Hanks fall in, with the text saying, "Warning, danger," foreshadowing Tricky's danger to both Hank and Jeb. Tricky later peeked out of the hole to look at Hank, with text saying, "Oh my fucking god, Cloud," before he got shot 2 times by Hank and falls into the hole. Before Jeb can get a hit on Hank, Tricky activates his true power of the improbability drive, with text saying, "Reality compromise. The clown has been engaged," before he pops out of the hole and attacks both Jeb and Hank. After Tricky fools Hank into shooting at Jeb instead, he swapped Hank out of the pit before decapitating his old friend. We cut back to Hank, who got swapped out of the pit. Sanford and Deimos appears to give Hank his old sword from MC4, looking very concerned about the clown's threat, before getting crushed by a building due to Tricky's improbability drive. Tricky then followed Hank out of the pit, showing Hank Jeb decapitated face, with text popping on screen saying, "Play to eliminate it," possibly showing that Tricky is still under the impression that the two are somewhat still allies at this point in time, before he goes on to fight Hank. After Hank managed to slice Tricky upper head, seemingly killing him, the clown isn't done yet, and it revives itself before decapitating Hank too. Reveling in its victory over the two, they shouldn't have escaped its grabs in Project Nexus 2 events. This episode shown how dangerous Tricky is if he has just decided to fight the two head-on in Project Nexus instead of playing with them, but also showing how Hofnar has spiraled so far down the hole that is insanity, that he just views everything as a game that would be too boring if you just speed through it. After he killed Hank, Tricky decided to pick up Jeb's fate that he decapitated, seemingly to try and use Jeb's power, due to him disliking how Jeb used his power to save Nevada and do all the stuff that Tricky deemed boring, instead of using it for chaos, destruction, and all the entertaining stuff. Unbeknownst to the clown that he would need the halo to use Jeb's godlike power. Frustrated that his attempt at using Jeb's power failed, he thrown the head on the ground, making it easier for Jeb to find his other half of his head after he wakes up. Tricky later met Sanford and Deimos, pointing at Deimos as some sort of him, saying that he recognized Deimos from when he tried to kill him back in the Monolith. Before charging at Deimos, the clown then began to fight the duo, with the clown clearly playing with them, showing that he could kill them easily, demonstrated by his uses of super speed to push Deimos out of the building, before he tried to charge at Sanford. Disappointed that Sanford, instead of charging at the clown back, chooses to jump out of the hole instead. Tricky then later disappeared in front of the duo, seemingly deeming their fight to be boring and doesn't want to continue it any further, before summoning another building for the two to go in, and committed his last act of violence on the duo by trying to run them over with his train. Briefly, after Tricky's encounter with the duo, Tricky began to focus on more important matters, possibly due to the auditor not making it an employee of the month for taking care of Hank, and text the auditor to say that he can do what he wants, and taunt the auditor saying that he can't be stopped. Seeing this text, the auditor decided to improve his member instead of focusing on Tricky. After he told the auditor off, Tricky is now going to go back to his root, that is, his affection for entertainment, by starting with his arch enemy. Hank is revived, possibly by Tricky, due to a note leaving on the ground that have A-T written on it. After Hank tracked down Tricky back to where the sheriff activated the improbability drive back in MC3, recalling Hank back to when the real menace just started to begin. Hank then found the note left by Tricky, taunting Hank to try and catch him if he can, before the whole building disintegrated and Tricky's train appeared behind Hank, causing Hank to think fast and jump on the train, avoiding being crushed. Knowing that Hank would try and get him in the conductor section of the train, Tricky loaded the train with the newly upgraded 1137 agents to slow Hank down, and separating the section, giving a timer for Hank to catch up to Tricky before he got away. Hank managed to hang on the conductor's section while Tricky trying to loosen Hank's grip by stomping on his head. When that doesn't work, Tricky used his stop sign to swat Hank out of the section, and with Hank grabbing on the stop sign, Tricky tried to shake Hank off, unsuccessfully. But not before we met Jeb, who is now just living a peaceful life raking leaves, contrasting his old friend Hofnar, who right now is trying to get a revived ninja off his side. The train then falls off into the cliff due to Tricky being too distracted on Hank, causing the train to crash, severely damaging Hank, but Tricky is still fine, before the two engage in a fight, similar to the one in MC5 once more, with Tricky throwing Hank a pipe for him to defend himself and fight with, due to the clown not wanting this to be too simple. But not long after, Tricky manages to kill Hank one more, but still aren't satisfied with the result. He revived Hank to fight him again, and waited for Hank to find his footing again, before the two began to fight once more, with Hank managing to knock off Tricky's head off. The clown thinks it's now time for a building break, so he summoned a building for Hank to go through. But Hank managed to go through the building faster than the clown expected, so Hank catches Tricky while he was buying a hot dog. This scene showed that so Tricky is a murderous, insane zombie clown. He only showed the first half to the one he's targeting and not to a civilian, especially if they're trying to sell him a hot dog, due to that being too boring. But Hank manages to catch Tricky defenseless, charges at Tricky with rage, and him being done with Tricky's shenanigans, axing him in the face and shot multiple rounds into Tricky's body, releasing the clown into the cliff. But Tricky cannot die as of yet, so his improbability drive corrected this error and revived Tricky as a hulking fire skeleton demon to face with Hank, with Hank being unfazed by this revelation, began to shoot the clown once more. So, how confident Hank might be, the clown's powers are too much for a grunt like him to compare, with Tricky taunting Hank while he's still down, after being split in half, with words such as insufficient, saying that Hank's performance against the clown in this form is too insufficient for him to win. Reach by, followed by incomplete, imply that Tricky wants to give Hank a chance to get up and try to fight him again and see if he would fare better this time. Plus, this would be too boring if Hank just died right now. Vengeance. This might be referring to the times Hank killed Tricky, and this is Tricky taking a revenge on that, backing up by another text saying suffer. While all of this text are popping on screen, Tricky is still trying to get Hank to get up by throwing him into the wall and attacking him a whole bunch, before the higher powers intervene once more and restore Hank's body to a healthy state to fight Tricky. Knowing that Hank isn't yet ready to face him head on, Tricky decides to play a game with him, where Hank would be running through the building that Tricky summoned, gathering weapons and supplies while Tricky is following him. The game didn't last long before Tricky got shot in his improbability drive by Hank's shotgun, angering the clown due to it being the possible first time for Tricky to feel pain in a very long time. Despite Tricky getting a brain damage from the attack, he's still focusing on playing with Hank. So with this determination, he punched Hank through the steel door before Hank can shoot again. After this, the clown stopped the chase for a moment and decided to take the drive out of his head and have two ATP engineers fixing it, while a 1137 agent guards them, before returning back to fight Hank in his miniature form after allowing Hank to gather some weapons in the meantime. Tricky met Hank after the latter successfully killed a mech agent with a chainsaw. After the two engages in a fight, Tricky quickly disarmed Hank of his chainsaw, before overwhelming Hank and throwing Hank out of the building, landing in front of the said engineers and agent outside, causing them to stop fixing the drive and focus their attention on Hank instead. Tricky then followed out to finish off Hank, only to find Jeb stealing Tricky's kill, but not before screaming "Hey!" alerting Jeb of Tricky. After his improbability drive has been shot, damaging it and stunning Tricky's power, the clown reverted back to its zombie self, before being finished off by his old friend Jebediah Christoph, setting the mortal world free from its insanity and chaos, and setting Christoph's old friend freed from the monster he became. Or so he thought. In consternation Hank's sides, the clown emerges from the purgatory ceiling after a grunt body that seemed to have a black mark resembling Tricky's injuries before his death pummeled into the ground, with the grunt black mark in the middle of his head resembling his injuries from Jeb's binary sword, and the black mark in the grunt's throat possibly resembling the injuries Tricky sustained from being stabbed by a stop sign in MC3. After emerging from the ceiling, Tricky immediately engages in the fight with Hank, or consternation in this case, notably still having his improbability drive qualities, zombie facial features, and lacking the green skin tone, before being put down by consternation with a desert eagle. The clown later appears with it muttering the words "so familiar," possibly referencing the time that Tricky fights Hank before his zombification. But while in the state of distraction and glitching, the clown got attacked by consternation from behind. But before consternation can finish off Tricky once again, the clown got abducted by a red lightning. The clown once again re-emerges from a grunt body that has a black mark resembling more of Tricky's injuries before his death, with the slice across his head representing the slash it got in depredation. The black mark on the body might be referencing to the injuries on Tricky's body. So, the black mark on the fingers doesn't seem to represent any injuries Tricky sustained. After emerging from the ground, replacing the grunt for Antipathy to see the clown escape through a wall, prompting Antipathy to follow it. After Antipathy catches up to Tricky and clearing the AAHW members, he charges at the clown with a falchion, slashing it in the face, prompting Tricky to say "ouch," followed by "listen Hank," and scream at Antipathy, moving the member's body up so Antipathy would know who is in control here, before the two engage in a fight, with Tricky summoning his skeletal form for Antipathy to fight alongside its normal self. Later, Antipathy is close to finishing off Tricky's normal form, prompting it to escape via slamming itself into the wall, and make the skeletal form attack Antipathy instead, before the retainers appear, possibly under the assumption that Tricky is on his side, due to both being a member of the AAHW, not knowing about Tricky's chaotic natures. But before the retainer can impale Antipathy with a spike, out comes Tricky from the next room, preventing the retainer from stealing Tricky's kill, before getting pushed back into the wall, with Tricky following suit while taunting Antipathy. The clown later appears with his stop sign find in the next room after Antipathy cleared all the agents, making it a perfect one-on-one fight arena. But Antipathy makes short work of the clown with a desert eagle, the same weapon Consternation used to put down Tricky for the first time in the Purgatory. But before Antipathy can move on to the next room, Skeletor Tricky appeared from behind and dragged Antipathy into the wall, with another Tricky following suit, implying that death works differently in the other place, the place where the dissonance energy come from and where the Purgatory reside. Later, after Antipathy wakes up, he sees a note on a wall that said, "Do what comes natural," implying that this note might be from Tricky, due to the lines matching up with the ones in MC6, with it being in a similar fashion, which is being a note telling Hank what to do after he woke up. After that, while Antipathy is fighting the Retainer once more, the clown appears to assist Hank before being killed by the Retainer Spike. But the clown isn't done yet, so his body flew up and through the wall, distracting the Retainer for a little bit so Antipathy can try to get his sword out, before the clown reappears with a chainsaw and slicing the Retainer, allowing Antipathy to escape. After all of the body from the Retainer has been chopped up, a text appears saying "Binding Compromise," which either referring to the Retainer being defeated, releasing Consternation from being retained, or Tricky compromising his binding with the AAHW by killing one of his semi-mech unit. Tricky then later appeared to face Consternation, while using its skeletal form to hold off Antipathy so it can have a one-on-one fight with Consternation, but got pushed back by Consternation, slicing its body first, and with Antipathy rising up from the below, killing the skeletal with a chainsaw. The clown was finished off by his arch nemesis. These two episodes, ending with Tricky's death, show one thing, and that is it's losing due to not finishing the job sooner. In Consternation, due to it wanting to play chase with Hank, Hank was able to prolong his demise, leading to Tricky's drive being damaged and needs fixing, and Jeb being able to kill both of them. And in this episode, due to it wanting to be the one who killed Hank and had some one-on-one fight fun with him, leading to the demise of the Retainer, cutting off the clown potential assistant in killing Antipathy, or at the very least, retain him. Even though the clown is finished off both in the mortal world and in the underworld, this wouldn't be the last time we saw it. The episode revolves around the fight between the Auditor, Hank, and Sanford, causing the clown's dead body to be forgotten in the midst of this madness, resulting in when the Auditor was trying to absorb more body so it can be stronger and able to withstand Hank's electric punch. The Auditor accidentally absorbed the clown's body, so when the clown's body entered the Auditor's body, the latter body started to go out of control. This might be due to the dissonance energy inside Tricky's body, causing it to get a life boost when entered the Auditor body, due to it being a gateway to hell as Nevada know it. The Auditor body started to spiral out of control due to three beings trying to occupy the same body. One is the Auditor, maintaining its own body, one is the Halo, and another is the Clown. Before beginning to explode, the clown said hello again, greeting his former employer and the one who gave it power, before exclaiming yes yes in response to the Auditor no no. The clown happily cheered while the employer's body exploded, reborning a new being, a new form for the clown to wreak havoc in. My god. Okay, this is gonna be another long one. The episode begins where the last episode left off, with the Auditor body being inverted to his own hell in the Auto Place. Out comes the skeleton army from the pillars, attacking Sanford and Hank below. These skeletons are minions to the new bearer of the Halo, Tricky the Clown, in a skeletal form similar to that in MC 9.5, but with white color palette similar to its demon form in MC 7. Before the clown started to scream Hank with all his rage, due to Hank practically leaving the clown alone in the Auto Place, devoid of any playthings and company to entertain itself, except for some incompetent members of the AAHW. The clown created a wall preventing Hank and Sanford to escape before it started to charge us at Hank while screaming the latter's name. The clown manages to overwhelm Sanford with his skeleton army and ripped off Hank's electric arm, critically damaging Hank in the process, before transporting them both to the Auditor's Hell, which the clown has access to due to it inhabiting the employer's body. Now in Hell, also known as the Other Place, Tricky can start his game with Sanford and Hank, starting off by summoning some agents for Sanford to fight. Seeing that Hank has arrived, the clown summoned his stop sign before getting punched by Hank and escaped through the wall, leaving the two to fight against the agents barehanded. After the auditors separated Hank and Sanford from each other, Tricky, not knowing about Hank's whereabouts, decided to use this opportunity to play with a toy he hasn't touched much yet: Sanford, starting by sending a few members of the AHW for Sanford to fight. Briefly appears before starting the second wave of Skeleton Army. After Sanford manages to come out of the building, the clown started the third wave, still with the skeletal army, but now with more equipped weapons. When Sanford gets through the skeleton army, the clown got some playful action in by tapping Sanford's shoulder, alerting him before knocking him to another platform with his super speed. Later, the clown summoned a familiar weapon, a M60, a gun he used to fight Hank back in MC3. After laughing deviously, reminiscing about the good old days, before picking up the gun and shoot it at Sanford. But not before he got some good intellectual action in, with the clown knowing where the best spot for the gun accuracy should be. Hank then appeared behind the clown with an augmented arm granted by the auditor to take down Tricky. Seeing his old plating is now back, he shifted his focus on Hank, before being slammed down into the ground and crushed by a platform filled with spike by Hank. So, the clown is not phased, and the two fight once more, resulting in Hank finishing off Tricky with a clown M60. But the clown is not done, and manages to get his halo back and knock Hank to Sanford's platform. Shortly after the two reunited, the clown played a trick with them once more by switching the gravity and attempting to crush them with the ground, before summoning more skeletal army with new armored mask for them to fight. After the two manages to fight through the horde, a max skeletal appear as some sort of final boss for them to fight so they can escape this place like this was a video game. Later, Hank manages to defeat the Mac and kill some more skeletal army and see something emerges from the barrier, which is the clown. The thing that has been tormenting him for so long has appeared before him once more. But Tricky is now being attacked by two red essence, making him vulnerable to Hank's attack. With Hank charging up the dragon sword given to him by the auditor, he struck the clown in the face, killing him for the last time, finally freeing Hank from the clown's games on him once and for all, including freeing Hofnar from his suffering after so long, leaving us at the latest point of Tricky the Clown's journey. The clown made a brief cameo as one of the thing appeared after Deimos tried to touch a grunt that looked vaguely similar to Hank in MC3, implying that the clown has been permanently engraved in Hank's mind due to its game, constant revivals, and torture it has put Hank throughout this whole entire series. Tricky the Clown, or Dr. Hofnar, is a story telling a man's journey from a brilliant scientist to a deranged psychopathic clown, showing how fast madness in Nevada can take hold of someone, from a trustworthy friend to a manipulative zombie clown who only wants to play games over actually saving the world from collapsing. Tricky is a perfect definition of the madness that has happened in Nevada, with points like these. 1. Hit mindset. He always wanted to only play games, only want to find and do anything that is entertaining instead of solely working for someone for the sake of profit. Why save the world from dangerous program when you can just play with the two who try to ask for your help? Why tell them how to prevent reality from being overhauled when having them figure it out themselves are more fun and more attention being raised? 2. His powers. He is one of the most powerful beings in the Madness Combat universe, due to his improbability drive granting him a near-reality warping powers, as demonstrated multiple times when he fights the main characters. 3rd, his alliance. He might work with you or for you, sure, but that doesn't mean he's gonna be on your side forever. If the job or role you gave him is too uninteresting, he gonna spice it up, and might even break off from actually doing stuff you wanted him to do, as shown with his allegiance with the Auditor. And finally, 4. His unpredictability. Combining all of his previous key points and his Hofnar intelligence that are still intact, Tricky can be a wildest of all wild card you can have. Tricky can went from sparing your life and teaming up with you to catching you off guard and decapitating you in mere seconds. And due to him having no sworn allegiance with anyone really, he will really just use them as a pawn, if it means he can get new things for him to be entertained from. Even so, due to his constant need of entertainment, he will leave up throwable points he can kill his opponent, leading him to his death or defeat. Tricky don't have any goals really in Madness Combat. He didn't want to win quickly because it would be too boring. He wanted to have a fair fight because that means it would let the fight to drawn out more. All he really wants is entertainment and play games with other people. Does it even matter if he died? Cause in the end, he got his fun. He got what he wants. That's why he is considered to be one of the core pillars of Madness Combat. Hey guys, it's me again, Asleep, from the video you just watched again. Thank you for watching this video to the end. It would help me a lot if you share this video, like this video. It would help push this video to the YouTube algorithm and help me a ton. Or you can support me by joining a membership. Also, I'm sorry if I'm a little too close to the mic. I'm just worried that my mic wouldn't pick up my voice, so I have to be really close to it. But yeah. Also, I'm probably gonna take a break from Madness Combat Retrospective for now. But you guys can comment some characters from other franchise and series for me to cover in the meantime. Whilst that's happening, see you guys in the next video. Or the next community post I got out.